right, everyone, we're going to get it started in just a moment, just giving people a chance to filter in.
Welcome in this cold evening.
Yes.
Although it's warmer than it's going to be for the next couple of days. So
No, it's
going to be making ice.
Quite cold at some point this weekend, so it should be an appropriate topic.
Perfect.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We are in a webinar this evening, so we will not see or hear those of you in the audience, but we do encourage you to please participate and ask questions in the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. If you shake your mouse, you should see that little kind of speech bubble icon. You can type in any questions you have there. And I am very pleased to introduce our presenter, Jim Lagacy. He is the Angler Education Coordinator for the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Erin. Glad to be here. And as Erin said, I coordinate the Angler Education Program. And that program, its main objective is to get people interested in the outdoors with the experience of fishing. And we do 100+ programs a year, relying heavily on volunteer instructors to teach. And we start off the year every year with ice fishing programs. And sadly, and in a way it's great too, is all these virtual programs. It allows a lot of other people to experience it. Even if you don't intend to ever go out and actually walk on water, you can see what it's all about and hear what it's all about. So most of the time, before the pandemic, we did all in-person stuff, but now we're doing a lot more of these virtual programs, which I think is good because, like I said, it opens it up to a lot of folks. So what we're going to do tonight is going to walk through the basics of ice fishing. We're assuming you're all beginners here, and I'm just going to walk through what you need to do to be safe. We've heard that word a lot, but you definitely want to be safe if you're starting this pastime, because you are going to be walking on water. And every year, invariably, you hear about people going through, whether it's chasing their dog out onto the ice, being a little foolish, young folks that weren't being watched. You always hear about those scary accidents that can turn really sad if you don't know how to test the ice. So we're going to walk you through all of that, all the gear that you need, how to use it, and hopefully it gives you the confidence to get out and give it a try. And we are going to have some in-person ice fishing programs, a handful this year, safe ice dependent. I probably cancel as many as I run in the East because obviously it's not as safe. We need good safe ice. In Central Mass and West, we usually have a few at least. So, but we'll share that information with you tomorrow and how to check it and how to come out and join us. So if you like this, but you're still a little intimidated and want to try it on your own, you're definitely going to be welcome to come out and join us with some events. So let me share the PowerPoint to start with, and we'll just get going. I'm sure we're all used to PowerPoints now for good and bad, but it really helps me stay focused on the topic and walk you through. So, and we do have some videos too. So this is ice fishing for beginners, again, newbies entirely. So if you're a veteran ice angler, spoiler alert, you've experienced all this before. So what we're going to cover is, why would anyone want to get out in the winter and walk on the hard water? Learning to be comfortable on the ice, some safety items you'll need, and how to test the ice, dressing for warmth and comfort, ice fishing regulations. Yes, there are specific regulations for ice fishing, essential ice fishing gear. You can't go out without the essentials. Tip up and jig stick techniques. Those are how to get through the ice and how to fish, and then some advanced tips for success. So we'll start with, why would anyone want to ice fish? I mean, well, this ice fishing in all the fishing pastimes is probably one of the smaller niches. A lot of people just stop fishing, and even if they're hardcore anglers in September, October, once it gets cold, and then pick it up again in the spring, or go on a trip in the winter or someplace warm to do it. But if you like getting outside, you can catch all the same fish, and ice fishing can be a wonderful experience. So it's fun. That's the biggest thing. Especially, it's one of the fishing pastimes. It's mostly done in groups. You'll see groups of people out, and those are usually family and friends enjoying their time on the ice. So it can be a blast out there, and we'll talk more about why. You never know what you're going to catch. All the same species that you would fish for during the open water times of the year are available to catch during the ice, under the ice, through the ice, I should say. So you know, but you can't see or during the open water times, when you're in a boat, kayak, canoe, or even shore, a lot of times you can see them With the ice, you don't know when that flag goes off or when your jig stick starts to go up and down. You're not exactly sure what you're going to catch till you bring it up. So there's that excitement, especially for beginners and children, because it's what's for dinner. A lot of people are motivated by eating freshwater fish. They can be really tasty through the ice, especially when they're in the winter. They can be really tasty, particularly the yellow perch that you see right here. There's recipes that show you how to make them almost taste like shrimp. There's shrimp cocktail recipes for them. They're super easy to clean and cook. So some people and trout are really good. Bass are good to eat. So you just have to abide by all the advisories that the Department of Public Health puts out there. We're not going to get too deep into that tonight, but we'll just say that a lot of people are motivated to go out and catch their dinner ice fishing. It's great exercise. There's new science that shows you need to stress your body at least 3 times a week to stay fit. And there's no better way to stress it and get out in the cold and work out. And you're going to work out if you ice fish. You're going to be cranking a hand auger or chipping through the ice. You're going to be walking with a lot of gear like we are here. So you're going to be working out in the cold and getting that great old vitamin D. So it's just a wonderful excuse to get outside in the winter. It's great for families, especially families with children, and because we'll show you this in a little bit. When that flag pops up on the tip up, ice fishing tip up, it just signals fish on, and it's just fun if you've never done it. And children love to run over to it and try and catch that fish through the ice. So it's just a wonderful activity for families. And because it's a tailgate party on the ice, that's my favorite aspect of it. I go out with a handful of friends, and it's kind of a social activity. Set aside a day in the winter, bring all our food, cook on the ice. We get out early and we'll cook breakfast and lunch, and might even, if the ice is really good skating ice, my other passion is just pond skating, pond hockey. So if I can combine the two, great, or just bring a football out and throw it around, socialize. It's a wonderful activity to do with friends and family. But, and I say, but before you go out, you have to learn to be comfortable on the ice. So I'm going to bore you now by stressing this and stressing how to be safe on the ice. Again, we've all heard a lot about safety, and if you're out walking on the water in the winter, you want to make sure that what you're walking on is safe to be on. So there's a bunch of parameters you need to have to be careful out there. So start by being safe, obviously. And for beginners, I'd even recommend wearing a life jacket, a personal flotation device. And that just gives you that ultimate confidence. Like if you go through, you're going to float, and then you can just pull yourself out. Bring a length of rope, especially if you're with a friend, and you can, that friend will have it or you'll have it, and they can drag you out. Wear safety spikes around your neck. These, it sounds a little funky, but they make a couple different kinds, but they just kind of go right around your neck like a necklace. And if you did go in, you take them out and you just use them, these little tiny spikes here, to pull yourself back out the way you went in. You don't want to go the way you were walking, because obviously that's thinner ice. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but you'd want to go backwards the way you just came, and those spikes will help you just pull yourself right out. Bring a chisel or other method for testing if the ice is safe. That allows you to drill through the ice. Wear cleats on your feet if the ice is glare. It's hard to walk on really slick ice. So if you wear these little cleats, and these come in a variety of styles, some are very expensive and some are super cheap, but all of them just give you a little more traction with glare ice. Or wear skates. If you're a skater, that's another great way to bring all your gear out into ice fish. Pack an extra set of dry clothes, whether on the ice or in your vehicle. If you're new, if you did fall in, you get out, you get warm, you get in the dry clothes, and it makes it a lot easier. This is for extreme stuff. You have to go over this. If you know what you're doing, this is not going to be relevant. You're going to easily master this in a very safe manner. So how thick does the ice have to be safe on it? Well, there's a lot of research that goes into this. And Mass Wildlife says 2 inches or less, stay off the ice. Don't even think about going on the ice. And for me, we ramp it up for all of our programs. When we're doing introduction to ice fishing programs in person, we go 6 inches just to give folks that confidence. 3 inches is safe. And this is clear blue or black ice, that really strong looking ice. And we'll talk about the different kinds of ice as we're going along here. 3 inches, so one person on foot. 4 inches, and you can get a group, single file. 5 inches, you can put a small group together. 8 inches, you can drive a vehicle out on it. I would never, and I'll talk about that in a bit. 10 inches, a medium truck, and all the way up to, what you'd get in the far northern New England and Canada, where you can get 30, 40 inches. You can, drop a plane on it or drive a tractor trailer out on it safely. We do not get that kind of ice generally here. Sometimes in the Berkshires, on a really cold winter, you can get 2.5, 3 feet. So you can occasionally, but central Mass to the east, generally, you can hope for a foot to 15 inches on a good winter. So determining safe ice, it's not always this easy. You're not going to get to a pond, a lake, a reservoir that's open to fishing that they'll post it. There's no one advocating. There's no one out there. We advocate for safety, but there's no one out there posting water body by water body if the ice is safe or not. This happened to have been a pick of a town water body that they used as kind of a skating rink. So they put if the ice was, safe or not. So they would post this. But a lot of times you'll see these just left up all year long because the town doesn't want anyone. They've had a few bad incidents. They don't want anyone on that ice. So they'll just leave that up. And that's so disconcerting because ice fishing and skating is such a wonderful winter activity. But they have 1 or 2 bad incidents and they just shut it down. They don't let anyone out on it. They don't want the liability. I get it, but they're just robbing people of a fun activity, especially when ice is plenty safe at what I just talked about, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches. And there's easy ways to test it yourself, so you'd know. So be your own advocate for safety. There's no clearinghouse out there that you can call or website you can check to say, is this ice safe on this pond or this lake? You have to be able to do that yourself, and it's so simple to check the ice yourself. Having said that, however, there is a website called iceshanty.com. And if you just Google ice shanty, an ice shanty is just a little ice house that you can go and fish out of. If I'll show you a picture of one as we go along here. If you're a real hardcore ice angler, so that's where they got their name. And if you go there, a lot of times they're posting about different water bodies throughout the state, talking about if the ice is, how thick the ice is, what they're catching, that kind of thing. So you can get tips from other people that have already been out and kind of gauge where to go and if it's safe. But I would never trust any of these sites or other individuals that you see out there. I would always want to test it myself regardless. So this is how to do it. And Aaron just let me know if there's sound. I did click on the sound. So hopefully
So Jim Lagacy again, Mass Wildlife Angler Education Coordinator. And the first and most important thing about ice fishing is being safe on the ice and being confident in your ability to be safe on the ice. The first couple of things you should have with you, especially if you're new and you've never ice fished before, is a PFD. This will give you all the confidence you need. If you did happen to go in, worst case, you'd be floating, which would give you the ability to stay on that surface and dig in and get yourself out. The other thing you should always wear, whether you're a brand new ice angler or a veteran, are these ice spikes. They're basically just little sharp objects that you can hold in your hand. You always wear them around your neck. There's a variety of different kinds, but basically just if you did fall in again, you can just pick your way back out and use your upper body strength to pull yourself out of the water. Very, very important safety item to wear. If you're fishing with a buddy or a group, as often we do when we ice fish, you should bring a length of rope. If someone does go through in your party, you can throw this to them and the other folks can drag you out. Again, worst case, what I'm going to show you next, you generally don't have to worry about any of this. You should still have it with you. But being able to test the ice for strength and safety is your number one thing to be able to do. So we're gonna take these off while I test the ice. And the way to test the ice is a very simple procedure. There is no website to consult or number to call to tell you if this pond is safe, if that lake is safe or not safe. You have to do this yourself. You have to be your own advocate for safety. So the first thing you do, you come down to the water's edge. On the very edge, we're at the boat ramp here on South Pond, Lake Quacumquasit, Central Massachusetts, early February here. A good indication that the ice is safe, you'd pan around and you see other people on the ice. You see other groups here, other groups over there. Then you can say, okay, it must be safe. However, I never trust anyone else. I want to find out myself. Some people will push it. Mass Wildlife recommends 4 inches, minimum 4 inches of black or blue ice for safe ice. What generally happens in southern New England is you get the freeze thaw mixed in, you get precipitation mixed in, so you get more of that white, milky colored ice like we have here today. We have snow on top. So that ice is not going to be as strong. So we like to see at least 5 or 6 inches. So we got to test that. We got to walk down. We're going to pretend there's no one out on the ice today, even though there's a few groups. We're going to walk down right to the water's edge. We're right at the shoreline, the boat launch here. We're just going to kind of move the snow aside here, and we're in maybe a foot deep of water, and I'm going to jump up and down. Literally just jump up and down and feel if anything gives or cracks under my feet. I don't feel anything giving or cracking. I'll go a little further out, still maybe in 12 to 18 inches of water. Jump up and down. It's a little slushy on the surface. Nothing's giving. So that's a good sign. If you were to feel cracking under your feet or the ice actually moving, you'd probably call it a day and say it's not safe. Never push it beyond that. But this ice feels really solid now. I'm going to move out a little further because I'm going to use a good old hand auger, a 6-inch hand auger. You can do it with a chisel or a small hand auger to see how thick the ice is. We're going to go a little further out. This might be 1.5 to 2 feet. So if you were to go through, it would not be the end of the day. It would be maybe up to the top of your boots. So plant your feet, just start drilling. Take your skimmer, kick the slush aside. Some people like to leave that as it kind of insulates the hole on really cold days and keeps the ice from freezing. I like to just get it out of the way entirely. Take your skimmer, move all the slush out. Remember, we're right on the shore here. Good little common sense too is when you're drilling near the shore, don't drive this down into the bottom. Just as soon as you punch through, bring it right back up because you don't want to mess up those blades. And if you have a chisel to check it, all the better, because that won't matter if you punch it to the bottom. Okay, now we're going to turn the skimmer upside down. I'll take my glove off here. We're just going to put the hook right on the bottom of the water, bottom of the ice here. Put it down till you literally hook the bottom of the ice. I'm going to put my hand right on the surface of the water column. Now you're going to measure from the hook to my finger. That's a good 8 or 9 inches. So 8 or 9 inches, even though it's not honeycombed ice, it's just that white ice with a lot of freeze and thaw and precipitation mixed in. It's plenty strong enough. So there is your indication that you're probably going to be okay. Now you want to stake out your location on the water. You'd look over. You'd probably already know roughly where you're going to set up. Say you want to set up in that cove or off that point. You'll still want to check it a couple more times on the way out. You will never assume that it's going to be the same thickness that it is on the shore. Ice freezes first on the shore and last out toward the middle, and vice versa. And it thaws out in late winter and early spring from the shore, and it's thicker out in the middle. Use those few little safety precautions. You'll have no problem out on the ice this winter.
There you go, folks. So that's how you do it. Very, very simple. You do need either a hand auger or a chisel, and we'll go through all the different ways to get through the ice in a bit, but you need some way to punch through the ice in some way to test it. The skimmer is just a tool that you need to clear that hole out, but you can do it with a stick. You can do it with if you don't mind, just putting your fingers right down in there and seeing what the ice is, the thickness is, but you need to be able to do that yourself. Don't trust other people. Obviously, if you come up to a water body and, it's late February and there's trucks and vehicles all out there and huge parties, and, it's probably going to be safe. And just keep in mind, though, that it definitely, what I stated in that video is it changes because it starts to freeze from the shoreline out. So a lot of times you could be ice fishing and there's still open water way out on the bigger lakes that hasn't froze up yet, but you can still have a foot underneath you. So if you're walking on a larger water body heading to a spot you want, like off a point or into a cove, test it a few more times just to make sure that ice is still safe. You're going to hear scary booming sounds if you're not used to being on the ice, whether you want to ice fish or you're a cross-country skier or skater, and they're pretty impressive sounds. It's settling and these large, literally booming sounds underneath you. So the ice is reacting to temperature and wind, which can cause expanding and contracting. So usually if it's in January and into February, when the dead of the winter, it's expanding. On cold nights and days, that ice is getting thicker. You're going to get those expansion noises and cracks. You can see them right here. This would look scary to a beginner. It would look like the ice is breaking up, but it's not. It's actually getting thicker. It's expanding and cracking and booming. So it's completely normal as long as the ice is safe. You've tested it and you've got that 4, 5, 6 inches. You're fine. It's only those are only natural noises that are actually helping to make more ice. If, however, you hear cracking right under your feet as you're walking and you can feel the ice give. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced it, but when you have weak ice, it'll feel like you're floating on jello a little bit. It'll actually bounce. And that was to my, when I was showing you how to test it, the first thing is you want to jump. You want to feel if there's any give, hear any cracking, like that bouncing. And if it's safe, it's not giving at all. It's stopping dead. So if you feel it cracking right when you're walking or moving at all, then it's not safe and you want to back off. But generally, give it time, give it a good cold streak. Don't go out after a couple of days of cold. I know everyone gets excited and after 2 or 3 days, even veteran ice anglers push it sometimes and will go out when the ice is not safe enough. It's a bit too thin. So give it a good solid week of freezing during the day and well below freezing at night. It can get up to low 30s to mid 30s during the day. Our sun angle is so low now, it's going to be ineffective to melt it. At nighttime, when you get those 10 to 12 solid hours of well below freezing, that you can make an inch or two a day. So give it a week, 10 days of that kind of weather, and you should probably be okay. But again, you got to test it yourself. So a few other safety precautions. You want to stay away from that early forming ice. Like I just said, give it a week or so at least of really cold. I mean, it may look fine. It may look nice and black, that blackish blue and really strong, but give it time to set up, especially like I said, it starts from the shoreline out. So you may be able to walk out onto it and it may be a couple of inches, looks really strong, but just around the corner or just out 10 feet, you're going to go right through. So don't push it. Stay off river and stream ice, folks. That is, here in southern New England, it's just not worth it. And you hear a lot of those sad stories of, people walking along a river or a fat stream and their dog ran out chasing after a squirrel or something, and it went through, and the person, in desperation followed their animal out. Rivers, you can, up in northern New England and Canada, it's a different animal up there. The winters are a lot longer and deeper cold, so they will lock up. But down here, unless it's a really slow, lazy stretch of the Connecticut River or the Merrimack River, we're at oxbows, which is kind of cut off from the main channel. It's moving super slow. Those can sometimes be safe when you get to mid to late winter, but any water that's really moving down here, you're just not going to get the winters enough to make it safe. Watch out for honeycombed or slushy soft white ice. Periods of long thaw. So used to always say January thaw, but you can get thaws in January, February that are a week to 10 days. Then it starts to get really like that, like a slushy, like Italian ice or slushy. It can look good. It can look white and strong. As soon as you step on it, you can go right through. Because that's how it starts to melt. It breaks up, looks slushy, then it goes all out. Late winter, it'll look like this too. So just beware of that. Make sure you test the ice multiple times on the way out. I've already gone over that. Beware of short edges that are exposed to the sun. I know this is going to sound weird, but the northern edges, we always think of north as the colder part, but the northern edges of lakes and ponds and reservoirs actually weaken first because of the winter sun angle. And if there's not a lot of SO, especially on the bank, it's grabbing that sun and it's making that northern edge weak. So be very careful that the southern and the eastern edge of water bodies are always stronger and easier to walk out on because they just don't get the direct sun angle that allows them to melt. So just beware of that. So think of walking on the southern end or even eastern end of a pond. In lakes and ponds, avoid stream inlets and outlets. Areas where you see streams coming in or going out, those are going to be weaker. There's moving water, and obviously docks. Anything that can grab that sun's energy, darker objects, docks, rocks, is going to be weak around the edges. It's just, typical, thermodynamics. If it's a dark color, it's going to draw the energy from the sun and it's going to melt the area around it. So beware of those. Quickly, we'll go over this. This is nothing I need to belabor. We all know how to dress for outdoors, or we should. I go with the adage: there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. To a point. I'm not going to be out below zero with a heavy northwest wind in the winter, no matter how many layers I have on, because the experience, it's just, I'm out there to have a good time, and the good times start to wane when you're any exposed flesh is, unless you have one of those ice shanties that I'll show you in a minute in pictures here, where you can get out of the wind. But I have my limits too. But really, they make clothing now that you can easily go out 10, 20, 30 below zero in heavy winds and still feel comfortable. And it's cost prohibitive. So if you really get into ice fishing, you can find that. And on those days, there's going to be no one out, so you can have the place yourself. But my limit is, single numbers, teens, keep the wind to a minimum, and just layer up, and you're going to have no problem staying warm out there. Whoop, jumped ahead here. So the right clothing obviously is to layer up. We've all heard it. You want a good inner moisture wicking layer, kind of like something I'm wearing here. And then an outer layer that's water and wind resistant. The wind thing is big. Obviously, if it's raining, who's going to, only the very ardent, serious anglers are going to be out in the rain, even during open water time. So, and that rain in the winters is absolutely miserable. It's in the low to mid 30s and you get a rainy day. It's bone chilling. So really the outer layer is trying to protect you from the wind as much as anything when you're ice fishing. And that can be a simple rain jacket. So, not even an expensive one. So inner moisture wicking layer, rain jacket on the outside, and multiple layers on the inside that you can shed or add for comfort. Obviously, protect your extremities. That's a no-brainer. Wear a hat. These are awesome, these balaclavas here. You can roll them down or roll them up for comfort. Decent boots. You don't have to break the banks. Just a pair of, felt-lined, no-name boots are fine. You don't have to spend a ton of money. Something that you can, put a couple layers of socks in, a moisture wicking layer, and a pair of wool socks with a decent pair of boots should be fine. You're going to be moving around a lot, so that should help. And you can move around a lot if the toes start to get a little cold. Obviously, proper traction, we talked about that. These come from $5 to $50, different types that give you that traction. And then eye protection. I've got like hazel colored eyes, but people with lighter colored eyes, blue eyes, they can be really impacted. But everyone should wear eye protection, especially if there's snow on the ice too. The reflection can really damage your eyes. So that's kind of critical in my mind. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And you can spend the moon on this if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it until you know that you really like it. So most people have kicking around their house the means to get out and give ice fishing a try. And you just wait until you get a day in the 20s and 30s and not super cold to try it and see if you like it. Because you may love it or you may hate it. Like any pastime, I love it. I love getting out with groups of ice fishing just to get out, and it kind of breaks up the winter monotony. So there are some ice fishing regulations. There, open water fishing regulations in every state, and going along with that, if you get out and ice fish, there's a handful of those too. So you'll need a fishing license in Massachusetts. Keep in mind, we're talking about Massachusetts, but if you're viewing this from another state, your state is going to have different regulations. Some states you need a license at 12, some at 16, some at 14. So just know your state fish and wildlife regulations. You can find any of them online. Just Google the state you live in. Here it's Mass Wildlife. You would just simply Google Mass Wildlife, and that's the first website that's going to come up. It's going to be all things fish and wildlife related in your state. So any state, that's your number one. So in Massachusetts, 15 and up, you need a license. It's free until you're 18, but you still need to have it at 15, 16, and 17, even though it's a freebie. So what you're allowed to use, and we'll show you the equipment shortly here, the best equipment to use when you're ice fishing. But what you're allowed to use per person is 5 hooks in the water. So 5 pieces of gear that get your hook down into the water. I more like to refer to it as lines in the water. Hooks is a little kind of confusing because people think of one hook, but when they're talking about ice fishing regs, a hook just means whatever's on the end of your line. So designed to catch one fish at a time. So it can be a lure with 3 big old treble hooks. That's 1 in the water. You're allowed up to 5 of those per person through the ice. So you don't have to just sit there with 1 rod. During open water times, you're allowed 2 rods per person to fish. So in ice fishing, you're allowed those 5. And it's any combination of the tip ups that we're going to show you, or the mini fishing rods known as jig sticks. And what I like to do is set 4 tip ups, which is the traps types. There's a bunch of different names for them, but we call them tip ups, and I'll show them to you in a minute. And those you set those with bait, and they'll signal you if there's fish biting. And while those are working for you, I like to take a little tiny little fishing rod, drill a hole or multiple holes and fish through the ice with my jig stick. And we'll also talk about and show you that technique as well. So think of it again as your lines in the water, not what's on them, but each line is designed to catch one fish, and you're allowed 5 per person. All anglers must be able to tend their own hooks, so your own lines in the water. So if I'm out there with 3 other people, we can put up to 15 lines out into the water, 5 per person, but those other 2 people better be able to tend them. They can't be brand new anglers that have no idea what they're doing and let the one person tend them. That would be against the law. They can't be 3 or 4-year-old kids that can't tend them either. So generally what I did when my children were younger, we'd go out as a family, my wife and 2 children, or just me at times with the kiddos. I would just set 5 or 6, 5 out until my kids got older and they could actually tend them themselves. And then when a flag went up within the 5, we'd all run over and have fun. As my son got older and daughter got older, then you can slowly start to get more out as they can effectively, and by tending them, that's setting them up. You can help them set up, obviously drill the holes and everything, but they have to be able to go over and pull the fish out of the water, and they have to know how to do that. So it's not licensed to just go out in a huge group and you just you multiply how many people by 5 and you can put all those out and tend them yourself. Each person has to be able to do that themselves. So very simple. Other than that, there's the other regulations are your minimum sizes, how many fish you can keep a day, that kind of thing. If there is a minimum size, if there is a daily creel or bag limit on that species that you're going after, some do, some don't. So just know those rules are there all year long, regardless whether you're open water fishing or ice fishing. So now let's get into the meat of the subject. That's the essential ice fishing gear. You can't go out if you don't have the right gear. And we're going to walk you through the basics. And then if you want to really get into it, what you can get to do that as well. So you cannot ice fish or check the ice for safety unless you have a means to get through the ice. And we've already kind of showed you 1 or 2 ways to do that. On your screen here from left to right are my least favorite to my favorite ways to get through the ice. So for the extreme left one is the ice fishing chisel or spud. And you'll see these in all shapes and sizes. This is a store-bought one with a very sharp point and a little safety guard on it. And the most critical part, obviously, beyond the chisel itself, is this strap you want to put around your wrist. What's going to happen is you're going to chisel through the ice. And as soon as you get through that, the momentum is going to want to take that chisel out of your hands. And many ice anglers have lost it. Right then it slips out of their hands and it goes right to the bottom of the lake or pond you're fishing, and you've lost your way to get through the ice. So make sure, even if you make them, some people like to make these. They're crafty enough to make their own and sharpen the edges, or that's been handed down in the family, or you pick it up at a tag sale or a roadside flea market. You can pick up some good spuds or ice chisels, as they're called. But make sure it either has a strap or rope on it, or you put one on, because when you're chiseling, you need that. I don't recommend these other than to test the ice, because they're a lot of work. As I get older, especially, it's my shoulders and my wrists and everything. I can get carpal tunnel with a lot of damage there, and I have over my life. So the chisel just kind of makes that worse, even a really sharp one. There are anglers that can get through a foot of ice in just 30 seconds with one of these really sharp. They know what they're doing. It's lightweight. They prefer that method. I prefer other methods, but I do keep one of these to check the ice for thickness. So the next one that is awesome for getting through the ice, is probably the most powerful one, is this good old power auger here. It is my second to least favorite, however, for reasons being this: they are heavy, they weigh about 35 pounds, they are often hard starting, they're carbureted, and they're mixed fuel. So that's oil and gas, and they're notorious for clogging up if you don't maintain them. While you're cutting, obviously you're soaking in that nice oil and gas smell, and they're super loud. So if your motivation is to get out and be quiet on a water body and just enjoy it and not wake up all the neighbors at 6 o'clock in the morning, these can be cumbersome. I run a lot of ice fishing events over the years, and I am absolutely using this, because we get out ahead of the event and cut 50 to 100 holes, and this can cut 50 holes in a matter of 15 minutes. whereas you use a hand auger or a chisel or even a electric one is going to take a lot longer. So this is a great tool if you want to get through the ice fast and if you're drilling a lot of holes. But and the other thing is also very expensive. Most of them are $400 to $500, so it's a pretty hefty investment for newbies. So getting on to closer to my favorites here, is the hand operated auger that I showed you in the other safety clip. And that's probably $50, very quiet. Keep the blade sharp. It'll go through a foot of ice in 30 or 40 turns, so 30 seconds or so. It does require a little upper body strength. All of them have settings based on your height. So if you're really tall, this would be on the tallest setting. If you're shorter, this comes way down in here, and you want it so you can exert some upper body force while you're turning. If the blades are dull, it's going to be painful exercise to get through. They dull really fast if you mistreat them. They come with a guard. You should keep the guard wrapped around it at all times when you're not cutting holes. And if you're not cutting holes, lay them down gently. Do not, just like I showed you in that video, you want to just start out slowly, then use your upper body strength. Million YouTube videos showing you how to use a hand auger. Great tool, inexpensive, easy way to get through the ice. The only problem with them is like I said, if the blades get dull, they're a curse, because then it's a lot more force to get through. But if you get 18 inches to 2 feet of ice, you're doing a lot of work to get through it. Now it's a 1 minute to 2 minute per hole exercise, and you're huffing and puffing. So that's when I go to my absolute favorite means to get through the ice. It's the conversion. This is a conversion plate, and most people have a cordless drill laying around the house, and then you would take the bottom of your hand auger off and affix it to the plate, affix the drill to the top, and man, this is fantastic. It weighs 10 to 12 pounds with a good 3 or 4 amp hour battery. It'll cut 50 to 100 holes easily, quietly, no fumes, very light. These are all the rage now, and you can multitask with them because you have a cordless drill that you're going to use around the house all year. Just make sure it's a decent 18-volt cordless drill with a 4 amp hour battery and a decent little 5 or 6 inch hand auger attached to this plate. The plate's about $100. Decent cordless drills, $75 to $100, and your hand auger is $50. So you're in for $200 to $250 as opposed to $500. It's lightweight, it's quiet, you're not waking the neighbors. So from least to most favorite, this would be my favorite way to get through the ice.
Jim, we had a question in the chat about if you don't have a chisel or an auger, if you could use another cutting tool such as a hatchet.
You can. I've seen videos of that. If the ice isn't too thick, you can take an axe or a hatchet and get through it. The holes are going to be a little disheveled, and it's going to be a little more work. But yeah, you can. I mean, you chop down trees with axes, and you can take down limbs with smaller hatchets. Just be careful with it. The blade should be really sharp. It shouldn't be dull, or you're going to get some bounce back. It's going to flail around. You are going to put a lot more pressure and work to your wrists and your elbows and your forearms. So I wouldn't recommend it. It's not the best tool for that. But if you have one and you keep it sharp, yes, no problem getting through the ice. I would also caution you, though, like the chisel, you should have some kind of a strap that you can wrap around your wrist. Otherwise, you can't believe when you go through that ice, all that force is going to knock that implement right out of your hand, and it's going down to the bottom of the water body, and you've just lost it. So as long as you can keep it on your wrist, keep it sharp, and come up with a technique within 4, 5, 6 inches of ice, that's perfectly fine. It's going to look a little odd. You don't see too many people doing it, but there are people that do use an axe or a hatchet to get through. All right, so now after you've got your proper clothing, you've tested the ice for safety, you've been able to get through the ice, you need to have some gear to actually catch fish. So the two basic methods are jig sticks, which are small little fishing rods, nothing more, nothing fancy. You can even take your freshwater fishing rod and just take the tip off and use the bottom section and use that. You don't have to break the bank there. And the other method is these tip ups right here. And we're going to focus on those first in a short minute here. Other things you kind of need are some way to transport your gear. You don't have to get all this fancy. This is a lot of gear. You can just put it in a little backpack, have your hand auger in one hand, your backpack in the other, and you can just go right out in fish. You don't need to bring it like this. This is if you're doing a group with a lot of people. Some way to keep your bait. We're going to talk about the kind of baits people use. And if it's fish, which most people do use, fish to catch fish, you need some way to transport the fish in water. An ice scoop, I showed you that in the other video, clearing out your holes. And sounding weights. Sounding, what is that? It sounds that sounds crazy. What do we need to sound the water for? Well, sounding is just a means of testing the depth of the water column. And you need to do this at each hole that you would drill if you set a tip up. And it's very simple procedure. And these weights allow you to do that. And they cost about 50 cents each. And it's a good idea to keep a few with you. And I'll show you that in a moment here. Some comfort items, hand, toe, and body warmers, a warming fire, hot drinks and food. I'd recommend all day long if you're going to spend any time out there. That just makes it, nothing tastes better. Food never tastes better, and drinks never taste better than when you're out experiencing time in the outdoors, whether you're camping, ice fishing. Everything's just, your senses are magnified when you're out away from your comfort of home and you have those comfort items. And don't let anyone tell you you cannot have a warming fire out on the ice. Perfectly safe thing to do. Obviously, you want to be on the ice. You want it to be in a location where you're not going to have overhanging branches that could catch on fire. Out of courtesy, you can take that wood and bring it back to shoreline so it isn't out there. But really, super safe. I do it all the time, especially if I'm in a group and I'm going to be out there and it's a cold day. Love to have a fire on the ice. And it's better to have it out on the ice than on the shore. It's actually safer. You're building a fire over water. What could be safer? But there are people that, for whatever reason, they're killjoys or whatever. They'll come out and rant that you're having a fire and it's not safe. That's insane. It's perfectly safe to have a fire, unless there's a particular town ordinance. It's a private lake association water body, and they have that ordinance. Then yeah, you'll observe their ordinances and their directives. But if it's a great pond, which is a natural water body in Massachusetts, that's open to the public, you can have fires all day long in that pond. What I like to do is take a trash can lid and set my fire on that. And that way, you don't have to worry about constantly shifting and moving the fire, because you are going to obviously melt water. And that over time, if it's not a big roaring fire, it's going to go out. So on that trash can lid, it's nice is that it'll put a little indent in the ice. You can just slide it around and keep that fire going. And I bring the whole trash can out with me, obviously metal trash can with a metal lid. I put all my fire making materials in that, and I put that right on my little plastic sled and drag it out if I'm going to be in a group and be out there for the day and it's cold. Love the fire. Gear to consider if you really get into it. This is what I was talking about, that little bob house or ice shanty, where that ice shelter, where that website got their name. They call themselves iceshanty.com. But these are what an ice shanty is. It can be just a little tent-like structure, or it can be a homemade wooden structure that you drag out on an old sled or skis. You'll see a variety of them, particularly where ice fishing is taken seriously on some of the bigger lakes up north, or out on some of the Great Lakes. You'll always see these. Just YouTube them. There's even plans to build your own. Obviously, the power augers are a little bit more investment. Again, $400 to $500, couple to $300 with this one. But if you know that you're going to enjoy it, I would recommend particularly this one, because it just makes quick work of cutting, and it's lightweight and easy and fun. Fish finder is another one. The ice ones are a few $100s. So again, if you're going to get into it, fine. Keep in mind that these are fish finders, not fish catchers. Nothing more frustrating than seeing the fish below you and not being able to catch them. A lot of the species of fish in the winter are warm water species, so they're just kind of existing, waiting for the spring, waiting for the ice to melt. So they're not all that interested in biting. If you put the bait in front of them, that's why the fish finder is important. You can incite them to bite, but a lot of times they'll just swim by it. They're not that interested. So don't be too put off by seeing all the fish. It's, you're in the game, you're right there, you're close. And that's why the fish finder can really help. And of the fish down there, not all of them are going to strike, but sometimes they will if you put the bait in front of them. Essential live baits, no different than the warm water times of the year. And that's why you see so much green. We film these for our other programs during the warmer season. I would say the number one ice fishing live bait is shiners, and they're golden shiners, or what we call pond shiners. And these are the two ways to hook them. I prefer to hook them under the dorsal fin, above the spine here, right above where the dark flesh is. And they can swim naturally, they can breathe, they can really do some good work for you. And then other people like to cripple them. I don't particularly care to do that. They hook them through the lips. Fish breathe with their gills by opening and closing their mouths. So that's the crippling effect of them. They will slowly die that way, and they will act crippled and sometimes incite a strike or a bite. But I prefer them just to swim naturally and hook them through the back. Obviously, worms and mealworms are awesome baits as well. No different than in open water times, and you can use them right on your jig stick. Generally, these are used more on your tip ups, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. So tip up and jig stick techniques. We're going to get into that a little. You've got your gear, you've got your bait, you have to know how to use it. So a tip up, and that's the common term for them in New England. Around the country and the world, they call them different things: traps, types, tilts, but we just call them tip ups. All they are is 3 small little pieces of wood. You can make your own or buy them. Buying them, they're $12 to $15 generally. There's a spool to hold your line, very simple spool, a length of spring steel that alerts you if a fish is biting, and then a trip mechanism right here that if a fish bites, that flag will go off. So let's take a look right now how to set one up.
My name is Jim Lagacy. I work for Mass Wildlife and coordinate the angler education program. And today we're going to set a tip up. Very basic operation here. There's just a couple critical steps you need to know to put the bait in the right location and to make sure you can actually catch fish. So the first thing we do, here's your standard tip up right here. There's nothing much to it. Three bars of wood, a little spool, a trip mechanism, and a little spring steel as a flag. So we're going to open that up to start with, and then secure the set screws down so it's formed into a cross, and then take the flag out just like that. And the first thing we do, and the most critical thing in the entire procedure, is we have to sound the hole. And sounding the hole is just figuring out the depth at each individual hole when you're ice fishing. So nothing to it. You use what we call a sounder, surprisingly. And we're just going to put that on your hook and drop that down in the water column slowly. So there's all different kinds of sounders. Some of them have little springs on them. This one just has a little clip. You clip right onto the hook like that. And we're just going to drop it right down into the water column. Just like that. And we're just going to let it slowly cascade down so it won't fall off that hook. We're in fairly deep water here. I think we're just about on the bottom now. Okay, so now we're on the bottom. And we know that because we can feel that sounder, that little 2-ounce sounder, just literally thudding on the bottom. So then we're going to put our depth. You can use an ice bobber or just a button you can put on it in the old craft store. You can grab these buttons and slide them on your ice fishing line, and you're just going to slide that down to the top of the water column like that. So you've got a straight line down to your sounder, and you're going to pick it up and slide that button 2 feet-ish toward the sounder or toward the bottom. And what that's going to do, that simple operation, is just going to keep your bait off the bottom and not hiding on the bottom in the weeds and in the rocks. And then after that, you're just going to bring the entire setup right back up onto your spool. And the average tip up is probably, $12 to $15, that kind of thing. And there's really elaborate ones you can buy, but these are the really cheap ones. And then you're just going to take the sounder off away from the hole, so you don't drop it down the hole. And then we need a shiner. Shiners, you can get them at bait and tackle shops, and these are golden shiners, typical New England pond shiners. And what I like to do with the shiner is put it on the hook under the dorsal fin above the spine. So kind of like where the dark skin meets the lighter skin. And it's wiggling around really good. The other way you can do it is by right under the lips, through the lips, I should say, but I don't like the way they swim, and they breathe by opening and closing their mouth with their gills. So it kind of cripples them a little bit, and they may die quicker. And you also have a little split shot weight, which gets that light shiner down into the water column. So then you just put it right back down in the water column, slowly. It's going to probably drop slow anyway, unless that split shot's a little heavier. But I like to use just a little light one, so that shiner swims more or less naturally. You're just going to let that go until the button is right on top of the spool. And we're probably fishing in at least a good 20 feet of water here, so it's going to take a little time. And this operation changes with each hole. I mean, you could be in 5 feet of water or 50 feet of water. That's why finding the bottom is critical and setting your depth button is critical. And there we go. It's right on the top now. Now you just have to set the flag. And that's your trigger mechanism right there. You're just going to bring the flag down and put it on the open side of that trigger mechanism, just like that. So you want to put it on the open side, so if the fish bite, it triggers that flag to go off. So we'll do that. And then there's considerations for the wind. So the wind today is kind of blowing out of the north, northwest, more of a north right now. So you want to set it so that the wind doesn't knock it off the trigger. If you were to set it like that, the wind might blow it right off. So we want to kind of face it toward the wind, drop it down in the water column slowly, making sure the button is visible, and you've just set a tip up.
So we'll just kind of review that, folks. I know that's a lot of information. And just keep in mind, this is on our website. You can watch this repeatedly. Just Google ice fishing tips when you get to Mass Wildlife. Get to our website. We're going to send you a lot of that information tomorrow anyways as a follow-up. So again, drill out or chip or skim away, drill out and then skim away your hole. Open the tip up just like I showed you in the video. Attach the sounding weight and on the hook, and what you have on that spool of line, you have ice fishing line, which is just a braided line, then a tiny little leader, 2 to 3 foot leader of just monofilament or fluorocarbon line that you put your hook on. And then if you do use that little split shot weight I talked about, just put that right on where your monofilament line meets the braided ice fishing line. You just clip it right there, and that just gets that shiner down into the water column a little quicker. But for this purpose, before you even get to that, you have to sound the hole, you drop it down, and then you're going to set the button, remember, or your ice bobber. They look like just little regular bobbers that you'd use during the open water fishing season, only they're made for ice fishing. And you're just going to clip that, slide it up and down based on the depth. And then you're going to pull the whole thing back up after you've determined the depth, and move that little ice button or bobber toward the bottom. You want to do it toward the bottom so that when you set it, your bait is going to be up off the bottom and not hiding in the weeds and the rocks. And then you're just going to grab your bait, put it on, and then slowly, like I showed you, cascade it down and leave. You can kind of see it here, the chartreuse green button right on top. And I just like to use a bright colored white or chartreuse button so you can see it. That's one of the indications that a fish is taking your bait when you go over to check it. And we'll look at that in a second. And then the proper way to set it, as you can see here on that trip mechanism, is not on the inside here, it's on the outside of this. This young lady's showing you here, it's right on the outside. If you set it on the inside, fish could bite and take your bait, and the flag will never trip. So you have to set it on the outside of this, and it will become very obvious when you see the tip up. When you set the trip, okay, it's on the exposed side. Very, very simple. Okay, and this little video is going to show you how to actually catch a fish with your tip up. Really short one.
All right. So the best part of ice fishing is when this happens. The flag goes up, you come running over. Newbies, people that have never ice fished before, love this because the flag is up indicating possibly there's a fish on. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up to the hole. You're not going to be too eager. You're going to slide up, skate up. However you want to get to the hole, you're going to come in and see if the spool is turning. And indeed the spool is turning on this one. That's your second indication that you have a fish on. This is your first when this goes up, and if the spool is turning, there's a fish taking your line out. So you want to be very careful. They're some fish are very touchy about how they what they feel on the other end of the line. So you want to pull this up slowly, lay it down on the ice. Now your indicator button's also gone, another great sign that you have a fish at least there biting. So then you want to pick up the line with your hand like this, and you want to physically feel if there's a fish on. And I'm pulling it in like this. I can feel a little tugging back. Then you want to just give a little tug up. We're using circle hooks, so they pretty much set themselves. So then you just want to hand over hand fight the fish back in, and you want to kind of put the line up on the side like this, so it isn't all like balled up right at the hole, making a big mess. And if you have a buddy, they can actually be taking that in while you're fighting the fish. Then you just bring the fish right up through the hole like that. In this case, it's a nice chain pickerel. One of your classics in the winter. You want to grip them really good like this. that, and we have a circle hook on this. So usually they're just caught in the upper lower jaw, really easy. And they have to be 15 inches in mass to keep. This one's right in that ballpark, but we're gonna set this young fish free today. And the best way to do it is just to put it right down the hole, head first. Don't put it tail first and struggle. You just put it right down the hole head first and free it up. And you've just caught a fish through the ice.
So very easy, folks, nothing to it. Again, these videos are all going to be given to you tomorrow, so you can watch them on our website over and over if you dare. And there's a ton of great YouTube content on ice fishing. So just weed through that if you need more content on how to set up and how to manage fish through the ice. But once you do it a few times, it becomes very intuitive. So the other way to fish through the ice is with these jig sticks. We call it jigging. So it's just a mini fishing rod like I talked about. You see this young lady doing that right here, and you can just use the same one you use during freshwater, as I said, or you can buy the the small ones for a small investment, $15 or $20 with the reel and the rod, and they're wonderful. And it can be very, very effective with live bait or with a lure and live bait. And to jig, you just do the similar thing that you would do to test the water depth. You're just going to take whatever you're using. You want a little weighted lure and some bait, or a little split shot weight, which is that little tiny weight with some bait on the end, a worm or a mealworm, and drop it to the bottom. Turn the handle and bring it up a little, and then bring the rod up and down. That's that whole jigging operation. That's why they call it jigging. You're just kind of moving the rod up and down. You don't have to do it a lot, just a little. And if there's a fish there interested, it's going to let you know almost right away. What I generally do is I'll set my 4 tip-ups, because remember, 5 lines in the water per person. I'll set my 4 tip-ups, and then I'll drill with my electric auger another 10 holes, and then I'll just move around and jig in those holes. And if I don't get anything within 2 or 3 minutes in each hole, I'll just move to the next hole. Fish will pretty much tell you right away if there are fish. And like I said, you can use live bait. You can put a bobber right there. So she could have a bobber laying right there near the hole, and just jig it really slow. And if you see that bobber bounce up and down, that's telling you there's a fish on. So it's another easy visual indicator to see if you have a fish. And I wouldn't stay in any hole more than 5 or 10 minutes if you're not catching fish. And if you start catching fish, I would stay in the hole, because usually where there's 1 fish, there could be 50 fish. They school up. When you do feel a bite, you'll see the rod going up and down pretty good. If it's a halfway decent fish, you just lift the rod up. And if you're using circle hooks like we advocate, they're just a design of a hook that's more in a circle, and it catches the fish easier. Then you just start reeling and fighting the fish, and it can be just as fun as fighting a fish in during the open water time. So nothing to it at all. Some people like to go minimalist ice fishing. They like to take their jig stick with some live bait, their chisel, a hand auger, a little backpack for snacks or drinks, and head out for a couple hours. They don't bring the heavy equipment. They don't bring the sled. They don't bring their tip-ups. Nice way to get out just for a couple hours. A few tips for success here, folks. So we have an app on our website. Or you can use on your phone. It's the Go Fish Mass. And I'm gonna open it up after this really quick and just give you a quick tutorial on it. I know we're kind of running right up against 8 o'clock here, but this is an interactive map. You open it up and you can literally walk out onto the water body you're fishing, and it'll show you where you are on that water body. So you know what depth of water you're in, where you are on that water body. So really cool. You can use it in your boat or canoe or kayak during open water times too. There's over 100 featured water bodies throughout the state. You folks, we're doing this with Wilmington, so a lot of you folks are probably from the east. Fortunately, we're in a small state, so you can get to the western part of the state in less than a couple hours. So all of these water bodies are available and open and great fishing. Some veteran tips: know where your fish live. In the winter, the bottom of the water, and that's why I showed you how to test for depth. The fish are on the bottom primarily. Most of the fish are after are bass, perch, pickerel, bluegills, some trout. They're all going to like water temperature at its warmest in the winter. The coldest water is going to be on the surface. The warmest water is going to be down deep. The water is its most dense at 34 degrees. So the water near the surface is 32. Even though it's only a couple degrees, the fish can sense it. They're going to be where it's most dense and warmest down near the bottom. So start there and then slowly work your way up through the water column. That's the biggest tip I can give you. Don't fish just under the ice surface. Some fish will be there. They prowl around. but most of the warm water species are going to be down near the bottom. It's the same old fish, folks. Like I said, it's the same fish you'll catch during the open water: pickerel, perch, calico bass, small largemouth bass, sunfish. Certain waters have lots of trout, pike, tiger muskellunge. So all the ones that you go after in the open water, you can catch during the ice. Don't drill your holes too close. This is a lot of people like to do this so they don't have to walk as far. But what happens if you get a big old fish and then it heads towards some of your other holes and tangles the other lines up? You can have all 3 or 4 tip ups going off with the same fish that just tangled all your lines. So you want to set them up 30 or 40 feet apart in general, and get that exercise. Think small. Your chances of catching more fish by offering a morsel rather than a whole meal is the way to go, unless you're after trophy fish. I know it sounds appealing, but if you're after like huge pike or bass, those fish will be more apt to strike a larger meal. But the problem is those fish are few and far between. So you're sitting there all day waiting for one flag to go off, where those same fish will eat smaller baits too. So you can catch huge fish with small baits and little fish, and a lot more fun because your flag is going off a lot more. So think smaller. Keep the bait with you. Keep that bait bucket right next to you at all times, whether you're checking your tip ups, you've just had a fish, you got to put new bait on. It's a lot easier, keeps the walking to a minimum, and then move around. If you're catching only, one flag keeps going off, one of your tip ups keeps triggering, move your tip ups a little bit closer to that one, because that's where the fish are. It's a lot easier to find the fish if you don't have a fish finder. If you have a fish finder or a friend with one, then you find the fish first and start setting your tip ups around the fish. But if you don't, use that tact, because sometimes the fish aren't moving much and you don't have your tip ups in the right area, find them and then set your tip ups in those areas. So I would normally end here, but I want to stop this share and just show you our website really quick. That is just such a great bit of knowledge, all things fish and wildlife. So just Google Mass Wildlife. This is the first one that's going to come up. And we have our seasonal announcements, all things about wildlife, about hunting, about fishing, right here. And then you have to buy a fishing license. You just click on here and get it. But we're going to go to the fishing section, and then we're going to get down to a particular section within it. There's tons of information here, folks, and content and videos, but go to the Go Fish Mass map. We're gonna open it up, and we're doing the Wilmington. We're working with the Wilmington Public Library tonight, so why not go out east here and find ourselves Wilmington. There's Wilmington, so you're going to beam right in there. And all these little dots are places to go fishing and have information. So you'd want to, that's your source. Every state's going to have these too. So if you're fishing up in Maine or in the Adirondacks or New York or out west somewhere, go to that state's fish and wildlife pages. Most of them are going to have these updated lake and pond maps that are going to help you a lot. So we'll just click on the Silver Lake one in Wilmington, open up the map. And this is one of our more primitive maps. We're updating a bunch every year, and we just haven't got around to the Silver Lake one. So this was probably back 30 or 40 years ago, but it shows you the two main streets that access the water body, and it shows you the depth. The more modern ones we do, like I said, you can just zip right in. I'll show you one of those, and you can just know exactly where you are in your water on the water body by looking down on your phone. So that one was more primitive, didn't have a lot of information. Let's zip to one that does have more information. Let's zip out. So you're going to go out to the Berkshires and fish. A short drive from Wilmington, hour and a half or so. Let's go over to a couple of the bigger water bodies in the Berkshires, Lake Onota. So you're going to zip down to Lake Onota, and it shows you this. As you beam in, it shows you all this bathymetry, which is the underwater depth contour. So you would do this on your phone, and you would be able to guide yourself out to the better water. And you always want to go off points, deeper water in the winter where the fish are going to be hiding, so you know where you are, and you zip right in, and it's going to show you those depth markers and those contours. So you're going to know where you are exactly on the water body. It's also going to show you the launch areas and parking areas. If you click on the Lake Onota information, it's going to have a detailed pond map. See, we updated this within the last few years. General information, recreational access, populations of fish, fishing, and a detailed map with the area, the city or town around it and access. So definitely use that resource. I could show a lot more, but we're over the prescribed time here, folks. So I'll stop that share, but you're going to get all this. We're going to send a link out tomorrow. Erin's going to send that link, and I'm going to send that to her prior to that. So you'll get all that information. And YouTube is your friend here, folks. This is just a short walkthrough, but YouTube, you can find so much more ice fishing content and some good stuff. So any questions, comments?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, enter them in the chat. And Jim, I know earlier, one question I had, you had mentioned that you never drive out onto the ice. Is that right?
I never would drive out onto the ice unless I lived in Canada. What a great question. I'm glad that was brought up. Thank you, Erin. What happens, folks, is if your vehicle ever went through, your insurance is not going to cover it. Keep that in mind. Absolutely. There's no insurance company that's going to cover that vehicle going through, and the environmental regulations in this state are very strict. So they're going to fine you for every day that vehicle stays in that water body. You have to get the tow truck or crane or whatever it is that's going to cost you a lot of money to get it out. And every day you're going to get fined for that being in there because you give oil and gas, and it's a tremendous environmental hazard. So not worth the risk. My fishing and hunting vehicle's an old truck, and I still would not take that old truck out onto any water body in southern New England. It can be safe in one area, and you have a spring or incoming water in this area, and invariably every year here, vehicles go through the ice. You can Google it and watch all these vehicles going through the ice, and it's just sad to watch what people will do with their own vehicles. I've seen some brand new ones out. I shake my head. I can't believe someone would take a $50,000 vehicle and drive it out onto hard water. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing it even before I knew that there would be a daily fine.
Right.
Well, we've gotten a lot of thank yous in the chat. And
Great.
I guess one last question would be, do you have any favorite spots for ice fishing? Any favorite spots in the state?
I'm coming to you from the Springfield area. I'm a Western Mass guy, so I tend to fish the water bodies out here. That's why I kind of zipped you to Lake Anoda in the Berkshires, but a lot of the ponds out in Central and Western Mass are excellent. I do fishing clinics all through the East. Silver Lake, I do clinics every year, and there's good fishing there. I would say Horn Pond and Woburn. I would say Spot Pond. I'm not actually sure. I shouldn't advocate that one. DCR controls that. Not sure they let people go out on that one. Nuttings Lake and Billerica is a really good fishery. We support events there, ice fishing events there every year when there's safe ice, and I do 2 or 3 clinics there every year. So those water bodies. Keep in mind, though, in the east, it gets a little shaky. You get out in Worcester County and west, and every year you'll find safe ice. So if you don't mind getting in the car and jumping in for an hour ride, there's just too many water bodies to list, really, Erin. There's just so many. And use that map. All of them are excellent fisheries.
Sure. It looks like we do have a question from Ron. What type of lure do you use? Do you like to use for jigging?
Excellent question. So there's ice fishing jigs. Literally, they're called ice fishing jigs. They're little metal jigs. I like what we call the Swedish pimple. There's another one called a Castmaster, and they're small, but they're heavy as compared to the gear you're using. I put a little mealworm or a little grub on that, and I drop it down the water column. And the Swedish pimple is probably my favorite. It comes in a variety of sizes and colors. I like chartreuse green, but there's ice jigs. There's ice flies. You can even use flies that you use for fly fishing and tip that with a little grub or worm and put that down in, and it works wonderful. So the sky's the limit. But I'd have to say, if I did have one, I would take my Swedish pimples out there. The goofy looking little metal lure.
All right.
With a goofy name.
We had a question from Jim. What was the lake you had mentioned in Billerica?
Nuttings Lake. Nuttings
And-
Lake. Very popular fishery. Has a big, long beach, easy access to walk out on it. We support an ice fishing event there every year. And when there's safe ice, we don't get involved when there isn't, because we don't want to advocate for unsafe ice. If there's 6 inches or more, we support it. We send out volunteers and gear and all that good stuff.
Excellent. And David would like to know where the clinics are posted. Is that on the Mass Wildlife
Yep,
website?
you'll get that tomorrow. You'll get our calendar page. We've got a few on there. We'll add a few more. And again, they're 6 inches or more of safe ice. We're going to run them. We have one in Lake Quincy in Worcester, one in Medway. We're going to have another one in the Worcester area. We'll have probably several out in the Berkshires. So, you know, it's a short season. It's safe ice dependent, so we don't do more than 6 or 8 on any given year. That's why these virtuals are great. Get out and try it yourself. You only need a handful of things to try it. But if you really want to come out, you'll have a couple of opportunities to come out with us.
Excellent. Wonderful. Yes, we'll be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that registered tonight with the resources that Jim has mentioned. And thank you so much, Jim. I know I've learned a lot.
My pleasure, Aaron. Thanks for partnering with us. This is fantastic. Get out on that ice, folks. Don't be afraid of it.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.